Hello and welcome to Salisbury and Sweetnam's first ever sports podcast. Could well be the last, but hopefully it's going to be many to come. Welcome aboard, James.
How you doing?
Yeah, really well. How are you?
I'll be honest, I'm absolutely shattered. You may look at that logo and think, it's not brilliant.
Which it isn't.
But that has taken us hours. I've paid my little brother 10% of all money earned to make that logo, and luckily 10% of nothing is nothing, so I've got that for free.
Yeah, great maths as ever, James. Okay, so let's get this show on the road. The Premier League of Darts returned on Thursday night, and it stopped off for the first time in Dublin. The first match was Simon Whitlock against Mensa Suljovic, and it ended 7-5, James.
Yeah, it's great to see Simon Whitlock back in the Premier League. He struggled a bit as of late, but it's good to see him back playing at that elite standard.
He has, but he's had a decent year as the Wizard this year. Made the Grand Prix final.
He did, yeah.
And it's always nice to see Simon Whitlock playing excellent darts. A former World Championship finalist, of course, and kicked off the campaign very well against Mensa.
Yeah, I really thought he did. He had a little bit more confidence than he usually does, and it's nice to see for somebody who struggled from nerves.
Yeah, completely agree. Anyway, moving on. The next game was Smith against Anderson.
Yeah. Anderson started well, as you'd expect, but Smith, who has always had so much talent, but it's just never quite clicked into place for him, and I really hope in this campaign that it works.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. He's one of the more frustrating players on the circuit. As we saw this weekend, actually, in the UK Open, Smith brushing the likes of Michael Van Gerwen to one side, beating MVG 6-1. Anderson was 5-1 in this game, and to be fair, Anderson is struggling with back problems at the moment, so Smith took advantage of that and well and truly murdered Anderson in the back half of that game.
Nice to see the friendship that the two men have as well. At the end, Michael Smith was saying it doesn't really feel like a win because of Anderson's injury, but ultimately a win is a win, and that's points on the board for Michael Smith.
Yeah, I'm not really keen about that from Smith. I mean, he really struggled last time in the Premier League, and Anderson's a massive name. If I was Smith, I'd be going out there giving it all sorts about how he's just got a big 2 points on the board, and how that is a statement to the rest of the competition. So match 3 was Raymond van Barneveld against Daryl Gurney. Gurney, Grand Prix winner, had a really good year, absolutely deserving of his place in the Premier League. Raymond, a wily old dog, was well worth a point.
Yeah, I felt like going into the game, Raymond had won it quite comfortably. Daryl's form hasn't been brilliant as of late, and Raymond was excellent in the Masters, but it was Daryl who had the better game. It was Raymond that had to sort of claw back. And it's good to see that because over the last few years, Raymond's head, when he's down, it just drops. And it's nice to see that he was able to force out and grind out a result. And it's points on the board, and you need that in this league.
Yeah, it's really good to get points early doors, and it was great to see Raymond really producing some of the best darts he's produced in many years at the Masters last weekend. Got to the final, probably ought to have won the final against MVG. But ultimately came unstuck, and it was really good to see Raymond claw back, like James said. A good result, actually, against Daryl Gurney, because he will be a star in the future, will super chin. So moving on, it was a repeat of an outstanding clash at the World Championship in the semi-final. Michael Van Gerwen, at the world number 1, took on the rising star, Voltage, Rob Cross, and Rob got the better of him at the Ali Pali, but there was no chance he was getting the better of him in Dublin.
Yeah, MVG, last year's world champion, and it really hurts him not winning it again this year. He wouldn't even give the television network an interview. So he came to give Rob Cross a hiding, and he did. Rob Cross struggled at the Masters, and he struggled again, and will he continue the form he had of late last year? We don't know yet. We assume he will be a star in the game, but MVG is still the best player in the world, and he meant business on Thursday night in Dublin.
I think ultimately we still need to give Rob Cross a bit of slack here. I mean, Rob Cross is still new. I know he's the world champion, but he's still new to the PDC circuit, and sometimes it can catch up with you. And he wasn't really in the Masters, no. He played all right against MVG, but when it mattered, MVG, not like usual, was absolutely phenomenal. And Rob Cross struggled at the UK Open in Wigan this weekend, when Michael Smith flourished. But I think Rob Cross will be back. I think Rob Cross will be in and around the top 4 come Judgment Night. So yeah, I wish Rob all the best. I think he's absolutely outstanding and will most definitely be a star in the game. Moving on to the final match of the night. Now this was really bizarre. I mean, Gerwyn Price, the Welshman, a bit dubious whether he should be in the Premier League, maybe.
Well, personally, I feel that he's marketable and he's had a good year. He's been in the final of the UK Open. He's been in the final of the World Cup of Darts, where he captained the Wales team to the final, where they were ultimately beaten by the Netherlands. But I do feel he's deserving of a place, and it's nice to see some fresh talent in that Premier League.
I think if Gerwyn Price just went up to the hockey and threw darts, he'd be far more likeable, he'd be far more talented. He's got all the talent in the world, but if he stopped playing games on stage, Gerwyn Price would be well and truly successful in the game.
He's had a few issues with Anderson on stage, and it's not brilliant to see. But what I thought, well, also I'm livid with Gerwyn, because when you've got Gerwyn Price at the most 180s and he lets you down, it really does hurt, because it felt like a dead cert. And
yeah,
also, really importantly, Peter Wright, yes, he looks dynamic and outrageous on stage, but that's ultimately due to his inner confidence issues, which he's discussed in interviews before. And something that's coming with these confidence issues is that he keeps feeling the need to change his darts, and I don't feel that that's helpful for him. He's gone for a completely different style in this game against Gerwyn, and it's not paid off, as he basically threw away a win and 2 points on the board.
I completely agree. I mean, unfortunately, Snakebites has changed darts more times than he's changed his hair. But I think Peter Wright is a world-class player. If he just stuck with the same darts that he's been successful with, Peter Wright would be more successful than he is now. But yeah, it ended 6-6 on the night in Dublin. Wright was in what seemed an unassailable lead.
Yeah. And finally we have the incident. Adrian Lewis, a few years ago, was on top of the world. But since then, things have sloped for him. This year particularly, he struggled to make it to major finals. And during a UK Open qualifier, there was an incident where he effectively assaulted his opponent. There was a few issues where Lewis said, "You are pissing me off," to this opponent, and he seemed absolutely baffled by it.
It was just really bizarre. I mean, you tell me what's kicked this off, but Adrian Lewis has gone absolutely potty on somebody who's relatively unknown.
Yeah, he's walked over and grabbed him by the throat. It's something you'd see in WWE, and obviously the security have got involved, and they've pushed Lewis away. And Lewis, if you've not seen him before, he's a big guy, sort of looks like your stereotypical Holmeswood bus driver.
Absolutely the case, yeah. Yeah, probably in around that 21 stone mark. Relatively greasy hair, tattoos. However, Adrian Lewis is probably, if not the one of the most talented darts players ever seen on earth, and there's no doubt in my mind Adrian Lewis will be back. It's a real shame he's not in the Premier League this year, but he will most definitely be back in that top 1 or 2 in the world in years to come.
Once you've played at the world level and then you slope and your mental game starts to go, and then you're assaulting other players on stage and you're suspended by the PDC, it's not the direction you'd like to go in. But anyway, moving on to the wrestling.
Yeah, we love the wrestling.
We're not claiming to be hardcore fans, but back in the day, we were seriously into this.
And when we say seriously, we were seriously into this.
Okay, so the Royal Rumble match is just fantastic. It's personally my favourite match. It always throws up shockers. I mean, I was even expecting a return of Chris Benoit to come out at number 3.
There's no need for that. Yeah.
But
rest in peace, Chris.
We did get a return of the Hurricane, which I couldn't believe. He's the sort of superstar that would get beat week in, week out. But you still enjoy him.
I was gutted that we didn't see the green mist, but never mind. John Cena had to ruin that he's ruined a lot of WWE things over the years.
We also got a return of Rey Mysterio, who's one of my all-time favourite superstars. And 4 days later, he attended an event in England, in Liverpool, at 5 Star Wrestling. But we'll get on to that. Shinsuke Nakamura ended up being the winner of that Royal Rumble. He's somebody that you've championed quite a lot over the last few years.
Yeah, Shinsuke Nakamura is a bit of an oddball. I mean, he walks out to one of the best walk-on songs I've heard in WWE in absolutely years. he's a real sort of star in the making. However, I mean, I wasn't overly excited when he chucked Roman Reigns over the top rope. I mean, I think with WWE there's a massive issue with marketing. Now, Nakamura's won the Royal Rumble, which is great for like people in Japan to say that they've got a star in wrestling entertainment. Also, they had Jinder Mahal, who is absolutely useless.
He's not Japanese, he's Indian, but keep going.
Yeah, I know. Jinder Mahal won the WWE Championship.
Yeah, that's when you know you're at a loose end.
A couple of months ago. That is ridiculous. Jinder Mahal is absolutely shocking, but anyway. Yeah, Nakamura, great walk-on song, not overly convinced by his talent, but whatever.
Yeah, moving on, we had a triple threat match between Kane, Brock Lesnar and Braun Strowman for the WWE Universal Championship.
Yeah.
And it basically felt like the match was 20 minutes in from the first bell. Choke slams flying early doors, people going through tables. And this was controversial. Braun Strowman accidentally kneed Brock Lesnar in the face, and Brock Lesnar, being a UFC star, punched Braun Strowman in retaliation. You think, well, this is WWE, they're bound to punch each other. For those who don't know, it's a little bit scripted.
I've been telling people for years, WWE, ultimately, is 100% real. If you don't believe it, you watch that triple threat match. Yeah. They put their bodies on the line.
Yeah, so Brock delivered a real punch, which seemed a bit unnecessary, but I saw F5s through tables. Kane went for a table and he actually hit the computer which was on the table, so I felt a bit sorry for Kane.
It was extremely painful for the big red machine.
But Brock retained his title ultimately, and he'll be defending that title at WrestleMania. Moving on to the Women's Royal Rumble, and as somebody's been accused of being a chauvinistic pig over the years, I was thinking, Women's Royal Rumble, why is that the main event? But I was extremely pleasantly surprised, and I have to eat humble pie. It was absolutely excellent. We got legends upon legends. Trish Stratus, Lita, Kelly, a 12-year-old me was over the moon.
Tori Wilson.
Yeah, Tori Wilson. That actually provided my biggest reaction of the night. I screamed, "Oh no!" when Tori was thrown over the top rope.
Woke his parents out. Oh, we nearly got kicked out of the house.
Yeah, explaining that you've woke them up because Tori Wilson has been thrown over a top rope isn't apparently a very good explanation. Yeah. Ultimately, it was won by another Asian star whose name isn't coming to me at the moment, but well done for her.
Something like Ukana or something. It's ridiculous.
The WWE.
I mean,
obviously going like massive on the Japanese market.
I mean, I was extremely satisfied to see Trish Stratus come back.
Oscar, she's gone apparently.
Oscar, that's the one. Yeah, Oscar.
There we go. Thank you to our technical advisor.
When Trish is coming out number 30, you're thinking, has Trish Stratus got a couple more years in WWE here? Unfortunately, no. Oscar, who I watched Raw the night after Royal Rumble, and to find out she's got a 2.5-year unbeaten streak in WWE.
Jesus.
You must be seriously talented to have that. Utterly ridiculous.
Right, okay. Anyway, it was a shame that the likes of Trish couldn't win it. Ultimately, they only have to create the storylines. I would have liked to have seen Trish win, but it doesn't always work that way. And at the end of the match, there was a lot of rumours that Ronda Rousey was going to be the 30th entrant in the Royal Rumble. And when it came to 30, I was thinking, Ronda Rousey, Trish Stratus. I know what I prefer, and that's definitely Trish Stratus. And I thought I got away from the Ronda Rousey stuff, but we hadn't. She came out at the end to bad reputation and pointed at the WrestleMania sign. A bit cringy, but it is what it is.
Extremely cringy. Let's be honest about this. Ronda Rousey was a superstar in UFC. She put women's UFC on the map. But ultimately, she gets absolutely walloped every time she steps in the octagon. She has to feed her ego by looking to twat people, ultimately. And in WWE, she gets that. In UFC, unfortunately for her, no more. She gets murdered.
Yeah, she's coming off back-to-back losses to Holly Holm and Amanda Nunes. Both losses where she was beaten quite comprehensively. Unfortunately, she doesn't have the striking ability to compete at the elite level in the UFC. But ultimately, in WWE, she's going to be a star, and she's going to win matches, which is what her ego needs, and basically what she needs to live a full and happy life. Anyway, moving on to another side of wrestling. Rey Mysterio flew over back to England And we have the first ever weekly televised wrestling event in the UK, which is 5-Star Wrestling.
And it's absolutely abysmal.
We have several huge names. We're talking Rey Mysterio, Rob Van Dam, John Morrison, Carlito, Chris Masters, even Adam off Love Island. A little bit ridiculous, but it is what it is. We're expecting these names to produce some unbelievable matches. Unfortunately, it just didn't work that brilliantly. There wasn't many people in the Liverpool Echo Arena, and it just felt a bit flat.
It was a horrendous turnout. It was horrendous talent on show also. I could have done a better job. James could have done a better job. Children in the playground do a better job than this shite. It was utterly obscene. There was only about 700 people turn up to the Echo Arena. As far as I'm concerned, get that off our screens.
Look, ultimately, the talent's there, so I hope that they can build on it and produce some decent matches. It's about time we have some decent wrestling in the UK.
Yeah, but ultimately, they must be making a massive loss. I mean...
I don't know how they're capable of paying the likes of Ray, etc.
They must be on massive money, and when they're not getting people... when they're not getting people to pay to watch this stuff, then they must be making a massive, massive loss.
Yeah, I said before it's a shame that BT don't get hold of this and give it some exposure. But if the quality's going to be what it was on the first night, obviously it can improve. But things like the walkout music, every superstar came out to the same music. It just felt a bit tacky. But I really hope it improves. Going on to the football, some big transfers that we've just had. Firstly, Alexis Sanchez and Mkhitaryan, big swap between Arsenal and Manchester United. Alexis Sanchez is a workhorse, and he's the type of person that Manchester United need in the team, I think.
Alexis Sanchez is an excellent addition to Manchester United. However, in my opinion, Alexis Sanchez is slightly overrated. I mean, don't get me wrong, he's a world-class footballer, but by the hype on Twitter that you're seeing from Man United supporters, getting Sanchez, and what an absolutely outstanding bit of business it is, I'm not overly convinced. I mean, they've got rid of Henrik Mkhitaryan, who assisted 3 Arsenal goals at the weekend. He was magnificent last season for United, instrumental in winning the Europa League. He was a really good signing. He's not hit the ground running this season, really. I personally think it's excellent business done by Arsenal. And also bringing in Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang too.
Yeah, as an Arsenal fan, you must be overjoyed for that signing.
Well, I'm not an Arsenal fan particularly. They're just my Premier League club.
It's his glory hunting team, which hasn't had much glory over the last few years, of course.
Yeah, you're a joke. But hopefully for Arsenal fans, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang will bring them success, because ultimately he's an absolutely outstanding goal scorer.
Yeah, another signing I think you might like to talk about is the signing of Jordan Hugill to West Ham United.
Yeah, Jordan Hugill. Well, 5 years ago, Jordan Hugill was a barman. And now, he's living the dream as a Premier League footballer. And for that, I wish him all the best. I'm a Preston North End supporter, and Jordan Hugill has been an outstanding signing for North End. We got him from Port Vale for about 20k. And he got a transfer to West Ham for around £9 million. And I think it's an absolutely outstanding bit of business done by North End. They've nurtured the player. He's a really good hold-up player. He's a back-to-goal sort of striker. Holds the ball up nicely. And can score goals.
Yeah, that video was a bit cringy, though, that he posted on social media. He can't wait to get out there in front of all those bubbles.
Hi, I'm Jordan Hugill. I can't wait to walk out in front of the bubbles. Come on, you Irons. Yeah. Absolutely comical.
Anything to say over the weekend fixtures?
Arsenal dismantled Everton. Great game on Sunday, actually. Tottenham against Liverpool. Absolutely ridiculous game, really. Spurs gifted Mohamed Salah a goal inside 3 minutes. Slotted home nicely by the Egyptian. And then, as the game went on, you just sensed Tottenham were getting more and more involved in the game. And they were awarded a penalty somewhat dubiously. A ball's trickled towards Dejan Lovren, and Lovren sort of outside edged it in cricketing terms with his boot. It's gone behind him, and Harry Kane's taken the ball and run past Karius. Karius has jumped at the feet at Kane, and Kane's gone down, probably slightly softly, but Jonathan Moss was quick to point to the spot, and then there was a bit of a pantomime about was he offside. He went over to the line. The liner said to John Moss, "If Lawrence touched the ball, then he's not offside," etc. So Moss has pointed to the spot, which Kane, I'll be honest, it's the worst penalty I have ever seen. It was a nightmare. He looked extremely nervous. He's trickled up to the ball and literally side-footed it into the hands of Karius, who's tried his best to assist Lamella, who's smashed it over the bar. Anyway, in the 90th minute, Liverpool go up the other end and score to wild celebrations inside Anfield, which is lovely for my Beckside, over 2.5 goals. But anyway, moving on. Spurs went up the other end, were awarded a penalty, more controversy. I'm sure you've watched this already, so I don't need my drivel about this. But anyway, in my opinion, stonewall penalty. The linesman's absolutely outstanding work to draw attention to John Moss. In my opinion, Virgil van Dijk, that 75 million defender, has kicked the Tottenham striker, and ultimately it was a penalty. So, probably in fairness, a good point for both sides. Yeah.
Anyway, moving on to the boxing. We started the weekend with British beef, which ironically...
Good weekend's boxing.
Ironically, a tattoo you're getting above your chest.
Yeah, well, there is a bit of a rumour that I'll be getting 100% British beef just above the belly button, but we'll see about that.
Right, we start off with Ted Cheeseman versus Carson Jones. Carson Jones, a veteran of the game. A lot of British fans quite like Carson. Bit of a shame he came in 4 pounds overweight, but it is what it is. Ted Cheeseman looked quite good, I thought. Yeah,
Cheeseman was actually really quite impressive. I mean, Carson Jones is an extremely good fighter, or he was. I recall him giving Kell Brook 12 rounds of hell.
Yeah, it's on Boxing God constantly on Sky.
Extremely bloody affair. But Carson Jones sort of came into the fight, put all his eggs in the basket of cleaning Cheeseman up inside 4. It didn't quite happen. Cheeseman was a bit showmanistic. I text James midway through the fight and I said to James, if Cheeseman wasn't such a cock, then he'd be extremely likeable. I mean, he's sort of... He thinks he's Muhammad Ali. I mean, he's very talented. He's dismantled Carson Jones, but ultimately, if he just got on with his glovesmanship, he would be a much likeable character.
Some egg into a possible fight in the future. But anyway, we had the main event. And over the last few weeks, people have really bought into Lawrence Okoli versus Isaac Chamberlain. We saw this massive puncher versus a master boxer, and unfortunately, it didn't really pan out that way. Lawrence just seemed far too big for Isaac, and basically just bullied him around the ring in one of the worst fights I've seen in quite a long time.
It was a shocker. It was an absolute shocker.
Nightmare for AJ Boxing's first promotion show. But 8,000 tickets sold, you can't really complain.
Yeah, well, I can't complain because it was shite, but anyway. I actually fancied Isaac Chamberlain in the lead-up. I thought he'd be too technically good for Lawrence Okoli, but Okoli was basically a big, bad, horrible
It was horrible.
bully.
It's really difficult to choose who you want to win when one of them enters the ring to... What's that song called? That grime song? Quick Maths, that one.
Is it the Big Shack shite?
Yeah.
Rapper Pat Pat or something?
Yeah, it's that song, but the name isn't coming to me. Man's Not Hot. There it is, there it is.
Crap. Awful.
Worse, the other one came in and was sponsored by 11 Degrees. So, ultimately, you just want them both to get cleaned up. But Lawrence Okoli won. He moves on, and I think he's fighting Craig Kennedy in Wales on the Joshua Parker undercard.
Lovely.
So it is what it is. Sad news, but potentially fair news. He's had all the time in the world to announce a fight. Tyson Fury's been stripped of the Ring Magazine belt.
Yeah, I mean, he is... Well, hopefully, if you listen to this podcast, then you agree that Tyson Fury is the greatest heavyweight on this planet when he's in 100% mental and physical state.
Often doesn't get the credit he deserves.
No, he doesn't, which is a real shame, but anyway. I mean... Tyson Fury's been inactive now since 2015. However, he's not organised a fight, but he's trying to get himself back into shape, and we wish Tyson all the best.
My only small issue with stripping him is that the vacant Ring Magazine title hasn't gone on the line for the Joshua Parker fight, which makes it feel like there wasn't really a need to strip him. But he has had time, so I'm not going to complain too much.
I agree to a certain extent there, because I don't think that Joshua or Parker are particularly brilliant. But anyway, I'd rather have the Ring Magazine title on the line for Ortiz and Wilder.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Ortiz is about 50 and is a drug cheat.
Claims to be 36, but you never know about these Cubans.
48. Talk about Cuban.
Right, okay. He's fresh out the jungle. He's coming off a 2-year layoff, a horrible knockout to Canelo Alvarez. But Amir Khan is back. He's fighting Phil Greco, who's not a particularly big name.
Useless. He's
lost to the likes of Errol Spence and Sean Porter, who are good fighters, but he isn't really a world-level fighter, Phil Greco. But let's be fair, the press conference has helped with the tickets.
Lively.
An issue that we have to have. Phil Greco made the comments, since you lost to Canelo, you've been on a losing streak. Your life, your family, your career, your wife. He then referred to a tweet that Amir Khan made where he referred to his wife as leftovers after he accused his wife of having an affair with heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua. And the issue is that I don't think that it's brilliant to bring up somebody's family at a press conference. You should target the boxer, but not their family. However, if you are going to refer to your wife as leftovers on Twitter, you can't complain too much.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, Phil Greco's got no chance in the ring. The only chance Greco might have is if he talks Amir Khan into absolute oblivion. Khan goes out trying to knock his head off.
Yeah, we've seen that before, obviously. In the Danny Garcia fight, where Danny Garcia's dad riled Amir Khan up, and Amir Khan went for the knockout and was caught by Danny, who stopped him inside 4 rounds. The issue is that Danny Garcia is a million miles better than Phil Greco. So I feel like Phil will probably get bingoed around the ring, take a nice payday, and head back to Canada a wealthier man.
Absolutely the case, yeah. However, all the best to Phil. I mean, if you're going to come out and give it all sorts about Amir Khan, who is a cult celebrity in these parts, you've got a decent size scrotum. So every credit, Phil.
Relevant comments. Right, okay. Another big fight announced. It's finally on. It's taken a while. It's taken basically a few years of being mentioned. Is it on? Is it not? Lee Selby versus Josh Warrington. It's at Ellen Road, and it's nice to see Frank Warren back at the stadium.
Absolutely fantastic. I'm a massive fan of Frank Warren. Unfortunately, I'm not overly keen on the two fighters fighting. Wales against Leeds. I'll be honest, I think Lee Selby schools Josh Warrington, but the fact that it's in Ellen Road, atmosphere, extremely passionate Yorkshireman. Yeah. I mean, yeah. Well, for me, Selby.
For me, personally, I believe that Lee Selby is the best featherweight in the world when he's on form.
Bollocks.
I personally believe that he beats Josh Warrington and then goes on to beat Carl Frampton. And
I don't.
The only case I can possibly make for Josh in this fight is that he's got a big home support. Lee gets riled up. Lee does struggle to make that featherweight limit. He's massive for it. And Josh is a pressure fighter, and he will keep coming at Lee. But I feel ultimately Lee's skill will be enough to see home a probable points decision.
Yeah, Warrington and Lee Selby were in attendance at Ellen Road on Saturday for the championship game between Leeds and Cardiff. And I see the fight going the way that the game at Ellen Road went on Saturday. Leeds won, Cardiff 4. I just see Lee Selby schooling Josh Warrington. However, with regards to Selby schooling Carl Frampton, that's another matter. Carl Frampton, for me, is the best featherweight on the planet and would defeat Lee Selby.
Yeah, Carl's an excellent fighter, but unfortunately, he had that excellent victory over Leo Santa Cruz. But in the rematch, Leo Santa Cruz adapted and he fought on the back foot. If Leo Santa Cruz, who's a pressure fighter, can outbox Carl Frampton on the back foot, you can imagine Lee, who is a boxer tricks, could probably also do the same. But we'll have to wait. It's a major fight. And if Carl Frampton beats Nonito Donaire in Belfast, you can imagine that it could be a stadium fight at Ellen Road for Lee Selby, and then moving on to another stadium fight at Windsor Park.
What me and James can agree on is get that fight on. Mad keen.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on, there was another big fight on Saturday. The World Boxing Super Series has been a revolutionary tournament. It's pitted
long
the
live.
best against the
Long
best.
live the World Boxing Super Series. It's been an absolute revelation.
Yeah. These semi-finals have included all 4 world champions. Last week, there was a very close fight between Alexander Usyk and Mairis Briedis in Latvia, which is up there with the greatest atmospheres I've ever seen. Mairis surprised a lot of people, I think it's fair to say, and he gave Usyk a really close fight. You personally thought that Briedis won it. I personally thought that Usyk won it, but ultimately it was a close fight and you couldn't really complain either way.
Yeah, there were quite a few close rounds. I just thought Usyk went in with a bit of a disgruntled sort of mind. I mean, he's a master boxer, Usyk. I'm a big fan of Usyk, but ultimately, he's gone into a fight with Briedis and tried to swing from bell on. Now, I'm not overly keen on that when you've got all the talent Usyk has, but yeah, probably a deserved winner. And yeah, he'll meet Gassiev in the final, which will be a cracker. So,
Gassiev-Dorticus, people sort of thought that Dorticus could potentially be the better boxer here, being a Cuban. And in the first round, Gassiev, who's trained by Abel Sanchez, who also trains Gennady Golovkin and had a short spell with Chocolatito and other sort of pressure fighters, people assumed that Marat Gassiev would be on the front foot, but he wasn't. Dorticus was pushing him back and landed a few decent shots first or second round, but Gassiev nailed tactics to perfection and sort of picked him off, was landing his left hook for fun. Dorticus had an excellent chin, I think it's fair to say, and in the 12th round, Gassiev caught him with a left hook, which is massive. Dorticus went down like a bag of spuds, really. Somehow managed to claw himself up, and then claw himself up again, but couldn't the third time. I really wanted to see Dorticus make it to the final bell, because he showed so much heart, but ultimately Marat Gassiev got the better of him and got the stoppage in the 12th round.
Yeah, I thought we saw an elite fighter in Gassiev. I know we know he's elite, but I think we saw Gassiev absolutely phenomenal on Saturday.
Yeah.
I mean, in the past we've seen him blow opponents away on the front foot, but on Saturday we saw him on the back foot, landing great shots. I think it was the 4th or the 5th round where he really started to get success with that left hook on Dorticus. But to be fair to Dorticus, he looked ready for the fight, he looked in good shape, and every credit.
It's set up. Actually, there was a really nice moment at the press conference. Dorticus broke down in tears having just lost his world title, and Gassiev comforted him, gave him a hug, and it's nice to see that sportsmanship at the end of fights.
Yeah, good to see.
So it leads to a final between Marat Gassiev and Alexander Usyk, which really I feel could go either way. Maybe Usyk a slight favourite, but I think it's a really, really good fight. It's going to take place in Jeddah, which is in Saudi Arabia. The World Boxing Series is taking fights all over the world, really. Small issue, this isn't really a racist thing, but are they allowed to fight with their tops off in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia? I'm not overly sure. That sprung to mind the other day. I don't know if they've just not thought this through. Or maybe I'm just being a bit uneducated.
Well, you put me on the spot there. But, I don't have a clue. However, my dad's just been to Saudi Arabia, and he said that they do one of the great breakfasts. It's called the Saudi Arabian breakfast, obviously.
Yeah.
And it's like bread, like a naan bread, and you've got a variety of dips, and you dip your naan bread in, and feed away.
We're not having a clue what to say about the Saudi Arabian culture. Just talk about the food. It's the easy way out. Next, this is an issue that's dominated sport over the last few weeks. Ring girls, pit girls, walk-on girls. Are we gone a bit PC mad? I think yes.
I also think yes. Now, we saw the PDC say they're going to stop with ring girls accompanying dart stars onto the hockey. We saw F1 say they're going to get rid of grid girls. I just think that it's... I don't really get it. I mean, it's been a feature of sport for years. I don't understand it.
The thing is, luckily, in boxing, promoters such as Eddie Hearn, Frank Warren, and even Callie Sauerland have stood forward and said, we want to keep the ring-con girls. Frank and Eddie probably really believe that it's a good thing and they do a good job. Callie, maybe, you know what he's like. He might want that for another reason. I think he fancies a couple of the ring-con girls.
Of course he does.
He's a party animal, is Callie Sauerland, regular taker of cocaine.
He loves ring girls, let's be honest. He loves women.
He doesn't feel any to lie about. He regularly takes cocaine and gurns on our screens as he as he talks about the fights that he's promoting.
Yeah, great promoter, we need more of that.
But yeah, ultimately, ring card girls do a serious job. If you're in the arena and you're watching an undercard fight and you're sort of losing track and you want to know what round you're in, then the ring card girls tell you what round it is.
You don't want to see a big sweaty bowl bloke walking around the ring, do you?
Ultimately, you could argue that there's sexualisation in the job. However, you do have to appeal to your market to a certain extent. And if there's men in the audience who that can appeal to, then that's what you appeal to. You appeal to your market. For example, if you're at a hen party, you'll have bachelors in the buff. It's not about being sexist. It's about just appealing to your market. And those ring card girls do an excellent job in informing the fans what round we're in.
Ultimately, when a ring girl gives her CV to Frank Warren or Eddie Hearn, they know exactly what they're signing up for.
Yeah, they're not
It's
forced
ridiculous.
to. This is a job. And why do we feel the need to put girls out of money?
I don't think that's the case, but in this particular scenario, maybe.
And moving on. Last year, a fight that's been spoken about for so long finally took place. The Canelo-Golovkin fight. I'll be honest, people were really, really struggling to pick a winner. Some thought Canelo, some thought Golovkin. Canelo maybe being the slightly better boxer. Golovkin with the power. They fought for 12 rounds. It was a good fight. Canelo looked brilliant early, looked the flashier of the two, but Golovkin's constant cutting off the ring and pressure got to Canelo late. And ultimately, I felt Golovkin did enough to win the fight.
He did. Absolutely. Let's be honest. He got robbed.
118-110 was a score given by Adelaide Bird. I don't know how much Oscar De La Hoya had to pay her to give out that particular score.
It's
but
ridiculous. I mean, I don't want to see that fight again because I got a clear win the last time.
Yeah. But we have got the rematch. The question is, Canelo being the boxer, can his game plan adapt? Will he have too much for Golovkin this time round?
He will not.
Or will Golovkin wear him down and apply pressure, get his jab out and win the fight again?
I see the fight going exactly the same way as he did the first. The fight I want to see is if Kell Brook carried the power of Canelo, I'd love to see Golovkin against Brook. Brook was having so much success with landing shots on Golovkin. Ultimately, he didn't quite have the power to see him off.
That's coming from a very hardcore Kell Brook fan.
Brook would have defeated GGG. Fact.
Okay. Potentially a bit of delusion there.
It's fact!
But it is what it is. Kell Brook, of course, back at £154. He's always struggled to make that welterweight living, so it's good to see that he's going to be back at a slightly bigger weight class, and hopefully
He loves the sport.
he can perform at his best. He has been threatening to retire. I wouldn't like to see that. I'd like to see him in with the IBF Challenger champion, Jarrett Hurd. He's going to fight against Erislandy Lara. He's probably the underdog in that fight. Erislandy will probably win. But we just want to see Kell Brook get another world title fight, and hopefully it maybe leads to a fight with Amir Khan.
If Brook didn't have eye problems, he would be an extremely successful champion for many years.
The fight for me to make, I'd like to see Billy Joe Saunders get a fight against Golovkin or Canelo. He looked sensational out in Canada against David Lemieux. Took him to school. I think the training situation with Dominic Ingle has been fantastic for him. He's taken the sport seriously now. And it's just good to see somebody with so much talent.
Also, Ingle needs to stop singing Oasis on Twitter. I mean, some might say it was decent, but his latest one was an absolute nightmare. However, yeah, he's working wonders with BJ Saunders, who talks the talk and absolutely walks the walk.
Yeah. And potentially a rematch with Daniel Jacobs is another good fight. Daniel Jacobs now with Hearn.
His birthday, isn't it, today? Or was it yesterday?
Could well be.
Yeah.
But anyway, Daniel Jacobs
Happy birthday, Dad.
is an excellent fighter. I personally thought he won the fight with Gennady Golovkin. I thought Jacobs boxed really well that night. It'd be nice to see him get a shot against the winner. Anyway, moving on to what could be a potential horror movie. When Alexander Povetkin fights David Price. Now, David Price is a lovely man.
Beautiful man.
Well, it just depends whatever you're into. But David, he's a really good guy. He had a lot of hype a few years back. But unfortunately, he got beat by Tony Thompson and never really managed to capitalise on the hype that surrounded him. He's taken on Alexander Povetkin, who is legitimately, most certainly in the top 10 heavyweights in the world, if not the top 5. Alexander's had a history of drugs cheating. he ruined fights against Deontay Wilder and Bermane Stiverne by testing positive for steroids.
Stiverne's useless though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We don't really... I wouldn't like to see Povetkin back in a boxing ring due to his offences, but he is. In his last couple of fights, he hasn't looked quite as good, which maybe shows his age or just the fact that he's not as good without steroids. But David, he's been taken out quite horrifically on a few occasions. You've got to worry for him. You've got to worry for his health. I would love him to beat Povetkin. I'd love him to beat a drug cheat, as he's been beaten twice by people who've been on drugs. But unfortunately, David will probably get taken out in pretty horrific fashion.
I tip my hat to David Price because ultimately this is an extremely tough fight. But let's be honest, for David Price to get back relevant in British and world boxing, he has to take this fight. If he didn't take the fight, he would just drift into the sunset.
Yeah.
However, if he beats Povetkin...
He could get a world title shot.
Exactly. And David Price, he had to take the fight, so every credit David and all the best.
Yeah, I really hope David wins the fight. I really do.
He won't though, but all the
anyway,
best.
maybe something you don't want to talk about, but a lot of people watched it. 20 million people watched it, in fact. I felt like quite ashamed of myself for watching it. But two YouTubers took to the ring at the weekend. KSI and Joe Weller for a sold-out copper box.
Pathetic. I can't believe
20 million fans.
I can't believe people gave it the time of day. It's ridiculous. It's all put on for hits on YouTube and lining the wallets of these so-called YouTube sensations.
Yeah.
Pathetic.
I watched it. There was a big build-up press conference. Unfortunately, an issue with going to the gym and stuff and convincing yourself that you're horrific, like really, really hard, can cause problems when it's put to the test. And Joe Weller found that being muscular and being a big guy who's done a small amount of boxing training doesn't necessarily make him an elite athlete. And KSI got his jab out and won the fight relatively comfortably, I think it's fair to say. It was a heavy victory for him. Unfortunately, Joe is now going to have to deal with gif after gif, meme after meme of him getting beaten up. And it's not nice for Joe. But congratulations for him having,
It's not like
the bollocks to get in the ring and sort out.
No, it's not nice for us having to watch that.
Well, it isn't necessarily, but it was a better fight than Coley Chamberlain, I think it's fair to say. Not necessarily.
Well, it's two novices in the ring, not lie.
Yeah, no, relatively entertaining. Small issue I have, KSI dedicated his post-match speech to depression, which is a fantastic message. Love that message. However, at the press conference, he said to Joe Weller, who suffers from depression, and I quote, "Do you need pills to keep you stable, bro?" Referring to Joe Weller's antidepressants. So it wasn't nice to hear that fake stuff from KSI. But he won the fight, he boxed well, he even called out Real Ferdinand, who's doing a bit of boxing for BT Sport. So, good luck to whatever those two men do in the future. A lot of 12-year-old girls went home upset from the copper... yeah, it's going this way. Joe's got a big fan base of young children who went home from the copper box crying, I think.
You and your filth again.
Well, not paedophilia reference intended. But Joe's fan base went home relatively upset. It was a very pro-Weller crowd. KSI got booed into the ring, but KSI ultimately did do quite well. Another thing that was quite amusing, Derek Chisora entered the ring to give KSI his belt, which I thought was quite funny.
Ridiculous.
Derek went on that night to go to the Lawrence Okoli Isaac Chamberlain fight. And it was a night of a lot of heavyweights at ringside. Anthony Joshua, Tony Bellew, David Haye, Daniel Dubois, Joe Joyce. So they were all at ringside, and Joe and Derek agreed to fight. And it's very early in Joe's career, but if he's willing to be fast-tracked and he's willing to get to world titles quickly, Derek Chisora is a good way to go. You could argue it's too early, but if you want to be a world champion, this is how you do it, really. Anyway. Moving on to the UFC. UFC 226, champion v champion fight. Stipe Miocic, the greatest heavyweight of all time, takes on Daniel Cormier, the greatest clean, I repeat, clean light heavyweight of all time. Adam, you're not a fan of this. Why?
No, I'm not overly keen on this. Ultimately, it's a light heavyweight taking on the greatest heavyweight on the planet. I mean, you can tell me that height, Cormier is fine, he's born to be a heavyweight, but ultimately he's taking on the greatest heavyweight of all time. This is This, for me, is a bit of a joke.
Yeah. For me, as somebody who loves Stipe and Daniel, they're two of my favourite fighters, it's a shame that I have to see one of them lose. But as a matchup, I think it's excellent. Stipe is the greatest heavyweight of all time. And after he beat Francis Ngannou, who a lot of people picked Stipe to lose, a lot of people thought Francis was going to catch him with that big uppercut. But Stipe outboxed him for the majority of the fight and completely and utterly out-wrestled him. What he can't do against Daniel Cormier is out-wrestle Daniel. Daniel's an Olympian who is unbeaten as a heavyweight contender. He went 13-0, and the only reason he competes at light heavy is because his good friend Cain Velasquez, who's a former heavyweight champion of the world, competes at heavyweight. Cain, unfortunately, is injured right now and can't take on Stipe. At light heavyweight, the only real contender is Alexander Gustafsson. He's also injured. You could fight Jimmy Manuwa or Glover Teixeira, but realistically, I don't think there'd be many pay-per-view buys. So, Daniel Cormier versus Stipe is two really nice men, two family men, who are both elite, both great fighters. You favour Daniel's wrestling. Stipe has the better striking. Stipe potentially the favourite, but I think it's a good fight, and it's hard to pick a winner. Edging towards Stipe, but it's a good fight, I think.
There's questions to be asked about UFC. If a man who can be the greatest heavyweight of all time, who only fights part-time, can be the greatest heavyweight of all time...
Yeah, he's a firefighter, part-time firefighter.
Then there's something seriously wrong in there, let's be honest.
Well, Stipe's a good guy.
Okay, he's a good guy, but that doesn't mean that it's an unbelievable sport and all that, does it?
Ultimately, he's the champion of the world. He's the heavyweight champion of the world.
I'm not disputing it, but there's a question mark over UFC.
Yeah, moving on. UFC London. It's going to be headlined by Fabricio Verdum. Michael Bisping was set to headline this card. Unfortunately, he's come off a couple of losses.
Cleaned up.
I'm a huge Michael Bisping fan, and I don't like to hear that, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
But
let's be honest. Michael Bisping has been laid out in the octagon.
Right, I can't stand for this.
I'm
not going to stand for this.
It's true.
Obviously, we're friends, but
Cleaned
I
up.
can't listen to this stuff. Michael Bisping is a legend of this sport. He's the greatest fighter to come off these shores.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more.
One of Lancashire's greatest ever sportsmen.
But sometimes James just can't let go.
Look,
Michael Bisping's been laid out last twice in the octagon. Retire, man!
Look, Michael is an excellent fighter. He's still an excellent fighter. He's one of the best in the world.
Who gets beat?
Yeah, but this is a sport where you put your life on the line. And Michael...
Well, don't put your life on your line when you got battered.
Look, Michael was in the GSP fight. He was doing well. The tide was really turning in his favour, but ultimately he was caught, and you can't do anything about that. He took a fight against Kelvin Gaston, which he probably shouldn't have taken, on 2 weeks' notice, and he took a shot and he went down. Kelvin's a heavy hitter. But Michael Bisping, I think, is a legend, and I'd like to see him have one last fight, have one last win. It'd be a shame to put all that work in. He beat Rockhold, he beat Henderson, he beat Silver, etc. And it would be nice to see him go out in a victory on home soil. However, he said if he didn't headline at UFC London, he'd retire, and he isn't headlining at UFC London. If it is the end, then I'm happy to say that I've seen him fight. He's a legend of the sport, and it'd be nice to see him have some good family time. But if he is to fight again, I'd love to see it one last time in Manchester. Song 2 going off in the Manchester Arena, and him going out on one big last win.
I like Michael Bisping and would reiterate what James said, but ultimately I don't want to see him put his life on the line anymore. Great fighter, legend, from Clitheroe, all the best, but please retire.
Yeah. Now, a man who can't seem to keep himself out of the limelight, it's Floyd Mayweather, who's been threatening to go into mixed martial arts. What do you think of this?
I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, Floyd Mayweather's an absolute wizard in a boxing ring. It actually wasn't a trademark victory against...
no, he didn't look great.
It's Conor McGregor, but ultimately the man's in his 40s.
Yeah.
He's an absolutely incredible fighter. He should not step into the octagon.
People don't seem to realise that these are two separate sports. A boxer will always beat the MMA fighter in a boxing ring, and the MMA fighter will always beat the boxer in a cage. Yep. So I'd like this all to be attention from Floyd, attention seeking, and he just stays retired and goes down as the legend that he is in the boxing ring, ultimately.
Couldn't agree more. Not much to say on that.
Yeah. This weekend we've got UFC 221. After Michael Bisping lost to George St. Pierre, unfortunately, GSP, he never seemed overly keen to take the fight with Australia's Robert Whittaker, who is the UFC interim champion at the time. George then went down with colitis, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that.
Whatever.
But he had to vacate the belt. Robert Whittaker was given the belt full time, the world champion. He was scheduled for a homecoming fight in Perth with Luke Rockhold, who's a former UFC champion. He lost, of course, to Michael Bisping, one of the greatest nights of my time watching fight sports. Michael, of course, winning the belt that night. But Luke is coming off a victory against David Branch. He didn't look brilliant in the first round. But, yeah, something going on. Behind the scenes are quite amusing. But anyway, he didn't look great. He didn't look great in that fight, but he got the win. So he got a chance against Robert Whittaker in Perth. Unfortunately, Robert Whittaker's got a staph infection that's been eating away at his insides. So he's had to pull out the fight. So who would step into fight Luke Rockhold? I'd have liked to have seen it been Kelvin Gastelum coming off the Bisping win, or even Chris Weidman. But it was given to Yoel Romero, who is an elite fighter, but he's coming off a loss to Robert Whittaker. And if he wins, he'll obviously get the rematch with Robert for the full belt. This, of course, is for the interim belt. I don't really want to see that, so I'm going to go, hopefully Rockhold wins, and we can get a fight for the full belt later in the year, hopefully. The co-main event, Mark Hunt is taking on Curtis Blades. And yeah, Mark Hunt is a guy who is a pioneer of this sport. He's in his mid-40s and he's still scrapping with the youngsters.
He's another one who needs to retire.
Yeah, Curtis, good young fighter. But I think Mark will get the better of him this weekend. Of course, there has been some controversy with Mark Hunt. Brock Lesnar tested positive for steroids at UFC 200. Mark believes that Dana White knew about this beforehand. And he's, of course, very angry with the UFC about that. He recently did an interview where he claimed he was having memory loss, where he was having speech problems. And UFC pulled him off a card in Australia, which he was headlining. But he's back this week. What do you think about that? Adam, should Mark be allowed to continue fighting? With the UFC right to pull him off a card after he said that he was having memory issues, etc.?
Yeah, ultimately, it's a combat sport. This sounds ridiculous, but they have to have the safety of the fighter first. Mark Hunt's in his mid-40s. He needs to retire. He can't keep fighting these spring chickens of combat sport. It's just ridiculous. But he's still extremely able. I wish Mark Hunt all the best. I think Mark Hunt's class. I love Mark Hunt.
We talk about knockout artists in Francis Ngannou, but people forget that arguably the best knockout artist in his heavyweight division is still Mark Hunt.
Fact.
He's lethal. He's the master of the walk-off knockout, and I think he wins this weekend.
In his 40s.
Moving on, Anderson Silva tested for steroids, failed the test, of course. Does this ruin his legacy?
Ultimately, yes. It's like when we find out that Mo Farah's been on drugs. I mean, that also ruined...
Well, not necessarily true.
That will ruin Mo Farah's legacy.
Yeah.
Like it has done with Anderson Silva.
Finally, as a man who picks which horse he wants to win based on its name, I can't talk much about horse racing, but Adam will talk you through the Dublin Festival which occurred this weekend.
That's just utter shite from James. But anyway, yeah, the Dublin Festival kicked up, well, was this weekend ultimately, at Leopardstown. And yeah, I'm not going to talk for too long because we've probably bored you enough, but at R3 it was lovely to see Super Sunday back to winning ways. It beat the great Farheen. I was a bit disappointed not to see Farheen win because I'm a big supporter of him, but John Harrington and Robbie Power linked up to get the better of him early on in that day, 145. I honestly think that York Hill is a world-class horse, but ultimately wasn't good enough on Saturday. And in the 145, Min, the French horse, Willie Mullins, was absolutely unstoppable. Looked really good. Went past Special Tiara, and ultimately romped home, bolted up to win. In terms of Sunday's action, we saw again just how good Sam Crow is. This man is this horse is an absolute machine. Gordon Elliott and Jack Kennedy will be absolutely delighted with Sam Crow. He was absolutely unstoppable. And yeah, to end, in the 3:35, Ed Wolf at 33-1 got the better of world-class horses like Jackadam, Outlander, Our Duke, Kultovic. It was a Manila Rocco. It was a great win for Ed Wolf, and it's good to see him back to winning ways because he's been struggling of late. But yeah, Manila Rocco was a faller in that race, but he is my pick for the Cheltenham Gold Cup. Yeah, let us know what you thought of that. We probably bored you to tears.
Could have been an absolute car crash, it's fair to say, but we enjoyed doing it, I thought.
It most probably is, but we both enjoy talking about sport. I know sports journalism at UCLan. Yeah, let us know what you think.
Nothing with my life.
Well, Trayvon James just up at all hours watching combat sports. But yeah, great. Great to get this on the road, and hopefully we'll do one next week. Thank you.
Once a week, hopefully. See you later. Goodbye.